show about The Simpsons. He's still doing comedy. Yeah, Yanni's still doing comedy. Charlie Pickering was on that bus.
Oh wow!
And so that's how I got started, and through that bus trip I met Charlie Pickering, and Charlie was running with Michael Chamberlain a room called Stage Time, which was at the Royal Derby, and it was shortly after that trip to Canberra that my mate said he wasn't a performer or anything. We just were two dudes who met in London and were having a laugh, and then we decided to go into comedy doing this thing. And he said, I don't want to do it anymore. And so I was then sort of forced to go, well, do I want to do it on my own? And Stage Time existed, and I'd made the connection with Charlie Pickering, and that was where I did my first stand-up spot as a stand-up in my own right. And right from the get-go, I had the guitar, and I did songs, I did parodies, and I was political too, right from the get-go. So I remember my first parody was a father and son, and it was about George Bush. That's how long ago it was. So this is about 2002. And I got the bug, and then I teamed up with three other comics, Sasha, Aaron Keefe and Monty Dean, and we did a group show at the Melbourne Comedy Festival in 2002 called Are You Doing a Festival Show, which we thought was pretty fun. Pretty cool. Because even back then, that was the thing that comics used to say to each other, are you doing a festival show? So we called our show that. And so, it's just crazy. That was great. This is great times, man. Like, it was a little bar called Bar 44. It's all been knocked down now. It's in Lonsdale Street. And the guy that ran... This is a true story. I got sat down by the guy who ran the bar. He invited me upstairs, and you know, and we're sitting there having a chat, and he starts telling me about how he used to work in radio, and he loved my porn parody, and he said the words to me, he goes, I'm going to make you a star. And the whole time I'd been looking at this little die-cast vacuum cleaner sitting on his desk. I'm going, what a strange, what's that? What a strange thing to have on your desk. And then he goes, this guy genuinely said, I'm going to make you a star. Do you like cocaine? And then I found out what the die-cast vacuum cleaner was for. It was hollowed out through the middle. And
the old Hoover.
We hoovered lines of coke. And, I'm about sort of 6 months into comedy by this stage. So we were talking about the whole business of doing heaps of it. I mean, I kept count. I remember sending out press releases for my first Edinburgh season in 2003, and I think I was that young into it that I put down how many gigs I'd done, and I think by that stage I cranked up, got to 2,000 in a year and a half.
Yeah.
So that's how mad for it I was. I was doubling up. I was doing everything. I did everything I could. I did festival shows. I remember I'd counted all the gigs I did in my first Edinburgh season, 80 in 4 weeks, including the 1 hour show that I did every night. And so, for me, it was, I've been around in entertainment long enough to know, and I was in my early 30s. So I'd been around long enough to know, well, you haven't got a heap of time left. Do as much as you can. And so that's where I started. And I just went for it in the first 18 months, 2 years. And by 2004, I was, getting paid relatively well to places like Holland and whatnot. And yes, it's just those first 2-3 years in comedy, heaps of fun, just so much fun. Like, I'll always look back on them and go, you don't get to. It's a young man's game, getting around and doing that much, being unattached, sleeping on people's couches, bouncing from one thing to the next.
Yeah.
You meet one person, they say. I mean, every single person I try and do a bit of mentoring with, I just go, don't get bogged down in this town. Don't do any more than 2 years in Melbourne. You'll get stuck in the politics. Get out. Like, if you can save up enough money, just get overseas, find out what's over there. That's how you grow.
Yeah.
That's how you really start. It's impossible to describe until you actually plonk people in it. So I've been taking comics over to Edinburgh for the last few years, and every single one of them, I'll say before we go, you're not going to get this until about a week into this. Then you'll come to me and go, oh, that's what you've been trying to tell me for 6 months. Yeah, different headspace. The way I always describe it is, if you can get over there, you'll find that there's sort of a market and a place for everybody.
Yeah.
Whereas the culture over here is very much, can you just be this, please? Like you were talking off air. Yeah. Like you were talking off air, Geordie, about doing a gig recently, and you got told to do. Can you just do this sort of material?
Yeah.
Well, when you go overseas, nobody ever says to you, can you do this?
Yeah.
Unless you know it's part of the deal. So if you've signed up for a corporate gig and you're getting paid good money, you'll know that there's type of material that you've got to stay away from.
Yeah.
No one ever tells you at a club gig or a comedy night that you're performing and you're getting your 30 quid, oh, can you just do this? Because you've probably been put on that bill because they know what you are.
Yeah.
Because the word's gotten around. And you've found there's rooms that you gravitate to. Whereas here, everything tends to be a little bit more homogenised. We tend to have a sort of similar feel to what comedy is a thing, and it gets put on there, as opposed to a room creates a particular style for which it is renowned.
Yeah.
So that was a long answer to your question, but
no, we want to know.
yeah.
No, absolutely.
It's good to know where people came from and how they got into it and stuff.
Oh man. So what about yourself? What made you go? I'm playing in bands. The band's not going too well. Was it?
Yeah.
Was it something that burned inside you the whole time, or did you?
Yeah, it was 3 things really. I felt like I was pushed into a corner with the band, and it wasn't so much of a collective. So it was kind of like ruling of the iron fist by 2 members, which is fine. They're doing their own thing now and all that sort of shit. The band's still going, but that's not what I had in mind. And the other one was the place I was working in, small workshop doing European cars, and it was a 5-man team. Every lunch break for 45 minutes they'd talk about work, and that just did my nut in. And I used to live behind that, behind the pizza joint, which was next door, so I used to go home and have lunch with my cats every day and watch daytime TV just for the fuck of it, because I just couldn't talk about work for another 2 fucking hours and all that sort of shit. And this may sound really, really petty, but it had such a big impact. They had no music on during the day. Like, everyone had a story from the foreman, so you'd bring a car in after a test drive, and if the radio was on, be it talkback, pop, whatever, a hand had just come through the window and just turned the radio off. Like, there just had to be no noise whatsoever, and that actually put me into what I can now recognise as some form of depression. And then the third factor of it was I found myself single for the first time in 10 years, and this is when Tinder blew up and all that sort of stuff, and found myself in these weird situations of having to, not kiss and tell sort of thing, but just run something by my mate that happened last night and be like, is this normal? Is this what dating is? He goes, no, that is not fucking normal. That's fucking ridiculous. So I found myself telling these stories at like parties and shit, and someone just said, that'd be stand-up material. So went down to Gorilla, signed myself up, and that was it. So all this horrific shit I'd seen through dating turned into material, and then as the months went on and that sort of shit, I started writing stuff and reflecting on other things I've experienced and all that sort of shit. I can't just pull an idea out of the air of like, oh, how funny would it be if a dragon came in right now? Like the drama class and shit. Like, all my stuff has to be.
You gotta live through it.
Yeah, this happened to me. It's pretty fucked up. What do you think? Kind of thing. And yeah, it was just like, and I'm sure you can attest to this, but coming from a band perspective, like, and doing the solo project, like, it was just the most liberating fucking feeling. Like, I can gig when I want, I can say what I want, say what I want. If I want to do 3 gigs this week, I can do 3 gigs this week. If I want to do 6, I can do 6.
Yeah.
You don't have to run anything by anyone, as long as you've got that opportunity of, like, can I do your room, can I do your room? Alright, I'm fucking set for the week, that's it, done.
I haven't got a room now.
Technically we're doing your room right now, but no, it was just like,
So if you're out there and you're thinking about getting into a band, as far as me and Geordie are concerned, it's not dissimilar to a gulag. It's like some sort of Soviet concentration camp where you'll be stripped of all your freedom.
Yeah, pretty much.
I told you.
Unless you're a musical genius like I'm not, you're pretty good. But no, it was just
Have you been were you a fan of comedy before you?
Oh fuck yeah.
So you've been a bit of a comedy anorak.
Just never once thought about doing it. Like,
yep. See, I always looked at comedy as that's the hardest thing. Like, if I don't do that, you know, all levels of getting on stage and doing performance. Like I did, you know, the high school musical. I studied drama at university. I got on stages for the first time I got on stage was sort of around about 15, 16 at high school, and then into a band. Then I wanted to write songs, and then I wrote a song, and then a song got played on the radio. So there was all these little markers for these things that I wanted to do. Yeah. In the back, right from 17, I used to sit there and go, that's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
The comedy thing's the hardest thing. So I have to have a go. So I just burned in my head, I have to have a go at doing it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and like I said, you know, to some degree, I took the coward's way out by doing a duo first and doing character comedy.
Yeah.
But, and it's still indelibly printed on my... Do you know that my very first stand-up spot that I did, that I'd go to stage time and just watch what went on, you know, a few weeks before Charlie had penciled me in to do a spot, and I'd go and I'd watch, and I'd go and I'd watch. And on the way home from one of those gigs, I went to an open mic, and I walked on stage, because one of the guys that influenced me, of many comedians, so one comedian I'd watched quite a bit of and really liked the style, was Eddie Izzard. So I really liked the way he played with surreal concepts and the way he gave characters to things and stuff. And I don't know, you guys might have come across this. A lot of people think that I wrote this whole bit about cats being aliens, right? Because if you do enough asking around, a lot of people reckon the reason the Sphinx looks like a cat is because it was aliens that came down and taught the Egyptians how to build the pyramids, and they honoured the aliens by building the Sphinx, right?
Yeah.
So I'd come up with this whole Izzard type bit where I talked about how this is obviously true that cats are aliens, but the cats we have here on Earth, they're the doll bludgers of the cat alien world. They're the ones who sit around, you know, in their cat alien smoking cones going, do you know if you do this long enough and you sit on the doll, eventually they give up on you. You know what they do? They send you a place called Earth. And they're like, oh really? What's that like? Oh, it's fucking brilliant, man. People decide to just have you in their house. They give you free food, right? You get to walk around all day doing fuck all. And that is... And this was, I seem to think that this is the bit, right? So I go on this open mic stage, it's not a comedy stage, it's open mic, and I do this bit, and it dies horribly. But a friend of mine came along and watched it, and I came off the stage going, oh, that didn't work, and she was just going, you're too smart for, that's way too clever for people, what you're talking about there. And one of the reasons I remember this, is because I jumped in the car to drive home, and it was on September 11 in 2001.
Yeah.
And I jumped in the car to drive home, and all the way home it was like an awesome world experience of going. The guy on the radio was going, the Twin Towers have just been, 2 planes have just been flown into the Twin Towers. and I don't know where you were where you first heard this, or where you were where you first heard this, but when I first heard this, I was going, the dude on the radio is taking the piss. All the way home, I went, this is bullshit. In a minute, they're going to go, this is just an awesome Wells game. It's just like all of the Wells. And then it wasn't until I walked into my share house, and all of my share house people I lived with were all around the TV, and it was on the TV, and I got to see it for real. I know I told that story. So I...
No shit. Oh, no, I could see how you'd... Yeah, I could see how you'd see that.
It was totally not believable when you first heard it.
I remember seeing it on TV. Like, I was getting ready for school. I would have been in year 10, 9, 10, something like that. And we never had the TV on during the week. Like, it was Fridays and Saturdays only. That was it. And my stepdad's sitting in the lounge room and he's got the TV on, and me and my sister are waiting to go to school, get the drop off, or get the bus or something. And I remember coming out of the bathroom with my towel, going to my room, and as the second plane went in, I was like, why are you watching movie trailers first thing in the morning? It's like, no, it's the news. I was like,
this
what?
is actually really happening.
Yeah, so threw some clothes on, watched it, and I think everyone was late to school that morning. Like, because this was just fucking everywhere. Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah,
so that's... So I'd always had this idea that this is the hardest thing to do. And still to this day, you guys would have had this. People say, they say, man, that must be the hardest thing. And you're like, no, seriously, like, talk to a surgeon, you know.
Yeah.
Like, talk to some, like, there's people that do heaps harder things that come with much worse consequences if you fuck it up.
Yeah.
It is nerve-wracking, but it's not...
Yeah, there's no consequences to it, you know what I mean? As in
shame.
Well, shame, that's about it, really.
Shame, embarrassment. No, but like I remember, like when I first started discovering these fucked up situations I was getting in with dating and stuff, and like I'd tell my best mate at the time, and he goes, no, it's not normal. And then someone suggested, that'd be great stand-up material. I was like, no, fuck am I going to talk about for 5 minutes? It's just a story, that's all it is. But I remember, like, I found a burnt CD that my stepbrother had of Rodney Rood and Kevin Bloody Wilson, and I think there was what's that guy's name? Rodney, not Dangerfield, the other one. The country singer guy, he has a penis song. Carrington, Rodney Carrington.
Oh, yeah.
For those people, for the younger people who are listening, he's not referring to a CD that he rescued from a...
we used to burn CDs.
We didn't. That refers to the process of putting a blank CD, trying to keep up with me, into a machine, and the laser. It's mad shit. It's you guys probably know it. It's very similar to making an MP3, but there's more pressing of buttons involved.
And getting stuff off LimeWire and hoping you don't crash your computer with a virus. Yeah.
Oh, LimeWire!
But I remember hearing that, and I was like, how the fuck can these people say this shit? And then I saw I had an interest, and he gave me a tape. I can't remember for the life of me what it was called, but it was a Billy Connolly collection, and that's where I got the storytelling. And like, you could just sit there and listen to him.
Yeah.
I didn't get half the fucking references. I was like,
I was
10 and he's talking about all these places in
I was like 12 or 13 when I heard Derek and Clive for the first time. Oh, that was the best.
I'm like, I didn't understand half the shit Rodney Rood was saying, but it was funny because he was saying fuck. Like, you know what I mean? And like now, I'd be like, oh yeah, don't know if you can say that, but like, I remember having it on a car trip on the way to Canberra with my grandfather. And he goes, I'll bring some CDs, and he just bought this Statesman, 90 Statesman, and he goes, it's got a 6-stacker in the back, you know, fucking technology like this, and he goes, load it up, you can do the trick there, and I'll put my CDs on the way back, so I'm like, fuck, I know I'm going to be up for Buddy Holly and stuff, and I just heard Slipknot for the first time, so I had a Slipknot CD, a Shakira CD, a fucking...
Why have they never collaborated?
Pearl Jam, that'd be amazing, I'd be all over that. And then there was this Rodney Rood CD, and I'm like, I've been listening to this funny stuff, do you want to have a listen? And he's just like, you can't listen to that. And I was like 12, and then by the end of it, he was laughing. Like, it was great. But yeah, no, I always thought comedy was brilliant, but then as soon as someone said to me, you know, like I always wanted to be a rock star, you know, like playing with tennis rackets before I got the guitar and all that sort of shit when I was a kid, and yeah, started telling these fucking stories at parties and shit, and so I was like, yeah, you could do stand-up. I was like, no, like, what the fuck am I going to talk about for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half hour, whatever it is, and then 6 months later I was starting to get bored with the band, and I was like, oh fuck it, I'll give it a shot. That was it. Fucking live for it now.
Once you get into it, you sort of see it all. That's when you sort of go, fuck. I can give this a crack. I can do this. Yeah.
But it's such a weird concept. Like you were talking for, on average, the length of a single that's on radio, like longer. Like your average single that's on radio is like 3.5, 4.5 minutes max. Yeah. Unless the DJ needs to take a shit, then you put Stairway to Heaven on. But like. You are talking for that time. It's the weirdest fucking concept. Like, here's some shit that popped into my head. Do you think it's funny? Like, it's just so fucking weird when you think about it. It's nerve wracking as fuck, but it's not the hardest job. But it's hard and different.
Oh, it's hard. It's hard because everybody does the same thing. It's just, you know, public speaking. It's the hardest thing, and you sort of go, fucking public speaking, and you know, and you sort of got to come up with shit, and you got to try to figure it out in your head, and then write it, and then rehearse it, and like you were saying before, try to get your bit right by, you know, the movement, and then if my movement's not right, and if should I add this bit in there, and then, you know, then you get there, and this was the thing. I mean, like I came to your room quite a lot, and that's where I basically started, and just seeing all these guys constantly writing, going. And then sitting there every time I'd finish and go, all right, got one laugh, fuck, all right, I'm doing something wrong here. And then get home and just start jotting shit down and going, but this is not the way I do things, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then I'll go back to because I did that for a while, I don't know if you remember, I just sort of went everywhere.
Yeah.
And then I went, that's not working for me. This is not, I can't do this every week, trying to change shit up and stuff. And then I went, I'm going back to my 5 minutes. I know it pretty well. Now let's start looking at movement. Let's start looking at, you know, working with the audience, pulling in, pulling out, doing all that sort of shit. And that's where it sort of, I went, all right, I can do this now because I can start figuring it out my way and finding my feet, sort of thing. But it is daunting. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's daunting for all of us getting up there. But when you see somebody just with ease, just sort of jump on stage and just naturally have that, I'm cool, I'm here, I'm in the moment sort of thing. And
the thing that got me in the first sort of 6 to 12 months coming from music, and I said this to lots and lots of people around the time, was I played a lot of covers gigs, right? And I was a front man, and my band we got so long in the tooth we didn't really follow set lists. It was you played the gig on the merits of what the audience was doing. So every single gig, for me to do the job, I just had to go, well, did this audience orgasm at some point? And there's always that point where the audience just goes off, as they say. And there's songs you use to create the building blocks to bring them to that moment, and then they have that moment, and you go, that's the job done. Now I can go and get my paycheck. Happy days. Yeah. But what I discovered from once I got into comedy was you could play a music gig at like 95%. The audience wouldn't know. Yeah. So you probably had this this experience, Geordie. You're playing a song and you've played it so many times, you know it so well. You're thinking of something else while you're playing it. You're singing a lyric and you're thinking, on the way home, I'll just need to make sure I've got to get milk on the way home.
Yeah, we'll get distracted by
tomorrow
banging
I've got to
or
go
something.
to do that banking thing, and you can be doing that, and your hands are moving and playing all the chords, and you're singing the song. You can't do that in comedy. If you're 5% off, you're not there. Yeah. Doesn't matter how funny the material is. The audience works out straight away that you checked out.
Yeah.
And you're just doing the lines.
I think it's one of the rawest forms of entertainment, I reckon. Cause
And what keeps you coming back, the payoff is the high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've taken quite a lot of drugs in my time, and there's no high better than when you get the gig, and you'll chase that for another 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what keeps people coming back, and coming back, because there's always something you can improve on, and then there's always that weird thing where if you have the big high, you know what's coming.
Yeah.
Is the low, and that indescribable confusion of why was it so good yesterday and it was so bad today, but I did exactly the same thing. I had an experience when I went back to Edinburgh in 2013. I was, the day that show opened, my wife goes to me, "You're very quiet." And I said, "Well, She goes, "Are you nervous?" And I remember going, "What the fuck do you reckon, man?" I said, "I haven't been at this festival for 6 years. I'm going to do this, the first performance of this show called Australia is Fucked," which is a big stretch for me, by the way. I don't want to break it to you, but I know that half this stuff isn't funny, right? A lot of it's just me just ranting about things. And that show was basically some banker stuff at the top, some banker stuff, and then some 20 minutes of me yelling at people, right? and I knew this, but I knew that in order to start on this new phase or this new art project, I was going to have to put one foot on the journey and get on with it. So I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but the gods were smiling on me, and I turned up, and there was 45 people in the room, and it was the first time I'd done the proper sort of free show thing in Edinburgh. And so I was pretty jazzed about the fact that the show had obviously got a little bit of people had picked it out of the guide, and they all came, and the gig went well, and I held the audience, and I opened strong, and I did my ranty bit in the middle, and I closed pretty well, and they put the money in the bucket, and I was really happy. So the following, I turned up the next day, the next Friday, did the same thing. It was work a day, it all went pretty well. By Saturday, getting pretty fucking confident, I'm back, baby. This is good, like the money's coming in through the bucket and the people are coming in through the door. And so what do me and the guy who I'm sharing a flat with, we decide, let's go and league that stupid press event that they're putting on for everybody, where all these people line up for the Scotsman and the Edinburgh Reviews. There's all these plonkers like standing in lines, like, I'm going to get a review. And I go to this fella. I said, "This is bullshit, man. You're wasting your time." I said, "Look over there. This is how sad these people are. They've put on free beer and they're not drinking it." Right. So me and this dude held up this bar for like 3 hours. And whilst out of the venue to go both do our respective shows that were on at 6 o'clock that night, walked on stage drunk, smashed it out of the park again. This is fantastic. I got it all worked out. The next day, I turned up sober. By this stage, I had a script. I was doing this, the bits went like this and this and this and this and this. I'd done it 3 times already, so I knew exactly how it went. 20 minutes into that show, I had a bit where I talked about how I used to be an attendant carer, and I used to have to, I described how I put a suppository in this disabled dude's ass. And I described how I used to have to reach, he sat on the toilet, and I reached underneath, and I popped the suppository in, and his nutsack would just sit here on my I'm describing it on radio, but you can't see. It's just past my palm, right? So
your forearm.
And on my forearm. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Medical Man. And and I'm describing this, and up to, like the last 3 audiences, they fucking loved it. He's telling the truth about how the world works and all this sort of. Just the 20, 30 people who are in that night, no good. just nothing, right? I'd been going okay, but this one anecdote of being a carer, and the reason I did this was a bit that I used to do where I told the audience that I was allowed to say the word retard because I'd worked with retards. And
all right, Mr. Bissett. Yeah.
And so, and it's exactly what I'm talking about. It's the outrageous thing that you're not allowed to say, but if you say it with a nod and a wink, and I was taking the piss out of that idea, and the punchline was to go, you know, I'm allowed to say retard because I've had my finger in a disabled person's arse.
Consensually.
And you haven't, right? And that's why I'm allowed to and you can't. And so I was, you know, tipping my hat to and taking the piss out of that whole idea. This audience, just dead silence. I had to actually stand there on the stage and go, I lost you guys, didn't I? Let's just recap here. And I went to this couple down here, and I said, when did I lose you guys? Was it the finger in the ass? They went, yeah. And I went, you guys over there? This was the finger in, was the, yeah? Is this? Okay, well, look, I'm going to come straight out and say this. This isn't me, right? Because I've done this for 3 nights in a row and people have been losing their shit over this. I don't know why you guys have all decided, you don't even know each other, and you're all collectively now decided that sticking a suppository in someone's ass is a step too far.
I was just doing my job.
And I told them that they all needed to just get real because this would all happen to them. They didn't like that either. I said, this will happen to you. You'll have a suppository put in your ass at some point in your life. That truth bomb wasn't breaking them overnight. So this is without a word of a lie, this is what I did. I went, in my brain, this is the best part of a free show. If I want to leave, I can just leave. I can just go, this isn't working. I'm leaving. You guys didn't pay to get in here, so I don't owe you anything. But I remember thinking, if you do that once, you'll do that a million times. So you better dig in. And this is what I went for. I went, all right, let's try and reset this gig. I went, you guys at the back, how's your day going? That's what I said. How's your day going? And they went, oh yeah. And I said, have you seen any other shows today? And they went, no. I said, this is the first one. They're like, yeah. I said, so how do you think it's going? Going not very good. So I just, and I like to, a lot of people like to, so did you dig in and then, build it all back up? Yeah, I did a serviceable job for another 35 minutes. And I went back to my script and I got them laughing again. And But, the bucket was nowhere near as good as it was for the first 3 nights. And I'll tell you what, people want to hear those stories more than they want to hear I got on stage and smashed it out of the park. So the high,
real,
the high for that comedy high that you get when it goes really well, that's only for you.
Yeah.
So you can never go after that, ring someone up and go, oh mate, you should have seen me. I was like smashing it out of the park. They're just going, yeah, whatever. But if you say, do you want me to tell you a story about when I was on stage and died on my hole to total silence, they're like, oh yeah, tell me every detail.
So would that be like your worst bomb, you'd say, or you?
No. No.
Let's finish this up with the worst bomb, and we'll call it quits for the day.
I had a joke I did that I wrote in Scotland, right? Now, Scottish people are well known for having a very black sense of humour.
Yeah.
And they let you get away with more stuff than you'll ever get away with in a place like Melbourne, unless you're with the Highlander, right? Which is on account of its Scottish-themed environment. So I've been doing this joke. I've come up with this joke in Scotland, and I've been doing it in Scotland, and I was doing it as an opener. It was going so well. I took it down to Manchester. Somebody came up to me, you know, a friend of mine explained to me why, you know, I walked on stage, did the joke, it was the talk of Manchester. My spot was the talk of Manchester for that day. Somebody threw me onto another bill that night because everyone was going, these guys come out of nowhere and da-da-da-da-da. And this was the joke. I went on stage and I'd do the old comedy trope of, I'd go, my girlfriend dumps me recently, right? And I had to be careful I had to always be careful to get the tone right. But if you got the tone right and you went on stage and went, it's been a rough week, my girlfriend dumped me recently, you would get the audience to go, it was Pavlovian half the time, they'd go, oh. And I'd wait for that oh, and then I'd go, oh no, save your pity. I used to hit her all the time. See, now you're going to get in trouble for laughing at that, right? And then I would say, but the guys in the audience will back me up on this, it is amazing how long they'll hang around.
Oh, no.
Right. Now, to people who know the tropes, so there's a trope in comedy of guys go on stage and say, I'm single, I'm a loser, right? So in one fell swoop, I'm taking the piss out of that trope. I'm throwing this surprise thing at you of saying, you know, as far as I was concerned, I was talking about that subject matter and at least talking about it and not keeping it behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And then I was making a very uncomfortable point that a lot of people possibly should leave when they stay, right?
Yeah.
And that's, you know, and that's contentious, but that's what, it was the type of comedy I was interested in doing. And I'd come up with this joke that sort of parceled it all together. It set up my character from the minute I walked on stage. You knew what this guy was going to do, where he was going to take you to, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, okay? And, yeah, you know, I go on this tour to Amsterdam for Holland, right? And I go around to places like Utrecht and do the joke, and same reaction, people laughing, right? In all the right places, sets itself up. I'm working so much, and I've got to do a double at to finish the tour. I'm doing a double at the club in Amsterdam. So you're going on at 8 o'clock at night, and then you're going to do a late show. And I go on stage and I say, girlfriend told me recently, save your pity, I used to hear her all the time. And 120 people all decided I was a cunt. Simultaneously. Have you guys ever been on stage? The way I've always described this, have you ever been on stage and your face just starts leaking? Has it ever happened to you? Yeah. Where it's the fight or flight response kicks in. And I've gone, oh God. And I went, no, they're not into this at all. They don't see that haven't got it on all the different levels. They have just decided in a very sort of, we're from the city and we're Dutch and punching women is not funny. Yeah. So I don't know. I had to do my time, so I went. You know, I had a script, and I went through all the jokes, and I closed with my little song, and they gave me a polite round of applause on the way off. But you knew, I knew, and this is one of the things that makes this job. This is when this job's really fucked. When you've got to go and get paid after that. You got to front up and like, can I have my 150 euros or whatever the shit that was. But the worst part about it was I had to do a late spot. Right? So I've got to come back to the same stage in 2 hours' time, and we stayed in a little apartment just above the where the club was, and I had this weed on the table, and I couldn't smoke it for 2 hours. I had to sit there staring at this weed going, I've got to go and do that again, right? But there was a wee bit of triumphant. I was a little bit triumphant because what I did was I just rewrote it in those 2 hours. And I went, my girlfriend dumped me recently, I save your pity, I was always sleeping with other women. That was exactly where they wanted it pitched at. You know, they weren't going for this, they weren't going for that. And, you know, I did a serviceable job and I got out of there. But there's nothing, I'll tell you what, there's like, that is absolutely, I'm 100% telling the truth. I felt water spurred out of my face. It wasn't like, oh, it broke into a cold sweat. No, water just felt like it had spurted out of my face. There's nothing, there is, and that's the thing that people say, oh, that's got to be the hardest job in the world. Because they imagine what it would be like to have 120 people or 300 people just decide to all hate you simultaneously.
Well, thank you for today, Kieran.
It's been a pleasure, boys.
Thank you for coming on.
Very good.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Have you got any news on Highlander coming back?
No news. I can't. There's nothing I can print at the moment because I haven't even. I'm due to sit down with Kate. I'm going in to do something there tomorrow, and I should sit down with her. But like as we were saying off air, I mean, what does this even look like?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Fair.
Like, how are we gonna, you know, how are you gonna do comedy to people all sitting by themselves?
Don't know.
You know?
No idea. Definitely not doing Zoom comedy. Fuck that.
No, don't do Zoom comedy.
No.
I've watched enough to know it doesn't work. I'm not interested.
That's not gonna work, I don't think.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't confirm anything yet, and I think it's all just about watch this space.
What about socials? Where can we find you, and where can people sort of rant with you and go after you?
I just try the Melbourne Comedy Rooms hub. That's usually where most people get stuck into me.
All right.
That seems to be the
fucking breeding ground, that place.
yeah, you can probably I'm Brian Kootler on Facebook if you want to come and hang out with all me crazy bloody woke, non-woke people on there, you know.
PC.
I don't know. What are the socials anyway? It doesn't even make any sense anymore, does it?
Once
Anyway,
again,
thanks for having us,
thank
guys.
Thank you very
Been
much.
good
for
fun.
coming on.